on a lot on a small monitor, and I guess with people with headphones on.
Not true.
No?
I always insisted, no, actually what I dislike is when my distributor sells it as a VHS, and actually the Centre Pompidou was on a small monitor with headphones. I tried to stop that, and I'm very happy you arranged for this kind of screening, because it's really ideal here. And also, I don't know too much about Nick Cave, but I know there's a fascination the Australians have with American history, particularly of the Protestant religious type situation. I'm amazed that it still resonates, and I guess I heard you all laughing at the kind of hippie section and the kind of Elvis Presley period. I guess it's something you vaguely remember. I'm very happy about the reaction. I thought the piece was hopelessly dated many years ago.
Dan, one of the things you've said about your work generally is that it's about the destruction of value in art. Can you say how you see that functioning in this work, in this video?
This was only my first proto-conceptual pieces, which is a different time period. When I had my gallery, Flavin showed fluorescent lights. He put one on the floor, somebody stepped on it, and it exploded. Flavin said all fluorescent lights after shows should go back to the hardware store. I did the first show of Solowit, and it was pieces that were wood. He said they should be used for firewood. Roy Lichtenstein, who was a hero of mine, said he wanted to destroy painting by putting cheap printed matter in painting. So the whole idea, very briefly, in the middle 60s was to destroy value. So what I did is I put everything as magazines as magazine pages that could be disposable. It was very influenced actually by not only Roy Lichtenstein but also the Rolling Stones. I did a piece called "Side Effects, Common Drugs." The Rolling Stones did a song called "Mother's Little Helper." They were accused of taking drugs by the media, so they did a song about housewives using drugs. The piece was supposed to be in Ladies' Home Journal. It was if you took one drug, you would have a side effect and have to take another drug. It was my way of doing op art, Roy Lichtenstein, and putting it in a common format in a magazine page, which would be disposable. Conceptual art, which I really disliked, came a few years later, and they had this idea that had no humor of art belonging to being about philosophy. I really relate to the idea of art as anarchistic humor, and I think I found it as I found it in Lichtenstein. I found it in the Ramones. Maybe it's because I'm Jewish, so I like this kind of. I like Jewish comedy, like Andy Kaufman, Mel Brooks. And I think value can be destroyed with subversive humor.
One of the things that strikes me about the film, in terms of the strategies that go on in it visually, over and above what is in the written text, which, by the way, most recently, Dan's rock writings have been republished in a book called Rock Music Writings by Primary Information in New York, and it includes the Rock My Religion text, and it includes the New Wave Rock and the Feminism essay, and various other writings. But the thing that the video seems to do a lot is this disjunction between what you see and what you hear, whether it's the scrolling text being out of sync with the voiceover, the band playing, not necessarily being the music that you were hearing, these kind of strategies. Can you say something about that?
I don't think I had any strategy. I think the form is a little like early Godard. In other words, it was kind of overlaid with. In Godard, there's a tension between the visual and the visual aspect and the text. So unconsciously, we're all influenced by early Godard films. All the artists. I had no strategy actually at all when I did it. I think it's just overloaded with so much information. You have to see it a few times. I think you could do more with film and video than you can do with the normal rock essay. But it was actually my appreciation of the music itself. Although I picked somebody I didn't like, Jim Morrison. I always thought he was a little bit pompous and fraudulent, but he fit my thesis. And also I know now that the great music, the music of the Doors, comes a lot from one of my favorite groups, the Seeds. Ray Manzarek's organ, which is so important in the Doors, was actually based on Daryl Hopper's role in the Seeds. Of course, being a rock and roll history aficionado, I keep finding these sources for things. I really think, but Jim Morrison fit the situation so beautifully. So I also had the idea, I have to say, that I thought Patti Smith was a Sagittarius. Actually, she's Capricorn with Sagittarius rising. So all her male heroes were Sagittarians who were self-destructive. Patti never destroyed herself. She's a survivor, and what I wanted to show in this film was that she was a survivor. Although when I made the film, she retired. Nobody knew who she was. She was married, had children, and I kind of resurrected her for the film. But I never met her. Although a few years ago she saw Rock My Religion and she liked it a lot. But actually, I never met her. In fact, I'd never seen a concert of hers until recently.
You're giving the game away. Can I just digress and ask you a little bit about a group that played a role in your retrospective last year, who don't figure in the video that we just watched, but who come from New Jersey like you, and who you speak about in the catalogue for the retrospective, and you also had perform as part of the Whitney venue show, the Feelies. Can you say a little bit about the Feelies? Because in the late 70s and early 80s, here in Brisbane, they were an important group that people listened to.
Well, actually, I used to take Kim Gordon, who didn't know too much about rock music, to Maxwell's, which is now partly owned by Steve Shelley of Sonic Youth. It was in New Jersey, and the Feelies were from a strange town in New Jersey called Haladon, which is near Teaneck and Nutley. And I thought they were amazing because I was a friend of Steve Reich's. Also did work with Lamont Young, and I thought the work, although it was pop music, had a lot to do with the acoustical effects that you got for Lamont Young, and also the rhythmic effects that Steve Reich had in drumming. And I saw when actually Thurston Moore put them back together again, and I had them do an acoustical set in the Whitney as part of the program I designed around the retrospective. And I realized with the two drummers, they were very much like Steve Reich, and I thought they came from Lamont Young, but I realized they were coming from John Cale of Velvet Underground, because John Cale was very associated with Lamont Young in his music. Of course, the fact is, Jonathan Demme wanted to make a film about them. In fact, they were the ultimate suburban nerd group. And I'm from the edge of suburbia New Jersey. But everybody liked television. I liked television a lot, but I thought they were becoming a little bit pretentious artistically. Mm-hmm. And the Feelies still have a pop music feel. In other words, I don't like experimental rock and roll. I really like the fact that rock and roll comes from pop. That's why I love people like Cyndi Lauper. I think you can't get away from pop. And also my favorite pop hero, who I've written about, is Dean Martin.
I just want to ask you one more question before we'll turn it over.